Art and science, both are related. And once we understand how so, we can make most of it to become a better thinker. But what is thinking really? Are there different ways to think? And how do others do it?
I think a lot.
Welcome to the fourth episode of How to Think, the art and science of thinking. As always, I bring you different perspectives, insights, and practical advice. Now, I always believe that anyone who thinks does that differently. What about you? Did you ever think how you think?
Okay, now most of the times people seem to be equating thinking with decision making, but I think thinking has to result into something, right? What's your philosophy of thinking?
As I grew older and got more and more exposure to different trades and different experiences in life, I kind of thought that many of the decisions that I have made in the past uh, were very much influenced by my surroundings. I did not necessarily try every time to create a choice for me to choose from. Basically, I made a decision, and that decision was sometimes was not mine. Even though it looked like I took that decision, it wasn't mine. So the way I'm kind of shaping my thinking these days is, how do I create a choice for me so that how do I create options for me to choose from so that I have to make a choice and not make a decision. Another thing is when I get influenced by surroundings, and you can't really avoid that. When you get influenced by your surroundings, I try to create my own perception of what that influence is, and then create a choice for me to choose from.
Creating a choice. That's an interesting way to put it because I think when we talk about decision making, we are actually selecting the best option from what is given to us. But creating a choice for ourselves, that's a different strategy. It puts us in the control of the situation. We get to decide what our options are and we want to choose. Now, I'm an engineer by training, but I have also been in several professions. And in every profession, I have seen a classic connection between principles I learned and the work I did.
Craft is something that you can train yourself on. Art is something that you have to learn yourself. And by that, what I mean is, um, when does a craft become art? When you apply craft in some activity in your life, then it becomes art, because then you bring your own perception or your own objective, your own, sorry, not objective, subjectivity to it. The moment any activity becomes subjective, it becomes art. I firmly believe engineering is not a science, engineering is an art, because engineering is application of basic scientific concepts, and that application of the same basic scientific concepts could be done differently for the same output by different engineers. And that's why engineering is an art. How does it relate to filmmaking? Filmmaking is also an art, but instead of applying basic scientific concepts, what you are doing is you're applying basic emotions to a final product of a story.
Interesting. So, when you were to think about something, say writing a script or maybe a filming scene, how do you go about it? What is your process?
Every single thing that you see around you, it could be a product, it could be an experience, it could be a film, it could be anything else. um, there is always a flow of things. So by flow, I mean, when you watch a film, it's flow of emotions. When you interact with a technical product, it's a flow of experiences that you go through. Like, for example, if you have a water pitcher with a higher water level at one end, and then if you have a water pitcher at with a lower water level at another end, and then if you connect the two with a tube, the flow of water will take place, right? So So my thinking is basically always understanding these potential differences that we see, and that potential difference could very well be information difference. So that kind of goes back to like the story part of filmmaking is why there is flow of emotions, because there is some information that the audience does not have at the beginning of the film that they get at the end of the film. And that's why there is a difference in information potential between 2 points in time in film, and that's why you can make the flow of emotions happen. How does it take place for me? I try to whenever I'm experiencing a flow, I try to understand why that flow is taking place in my life, flow of experiences, flow of emotions. Whenever I'm watching a film, why a scene is going from this scene to next scene. When I'm making something, I'm also doing the same thing, that I'm trying to create a flow for emotions or for experiences or something like that. And that's a very intentional thing to do, by the way. I mean, you have to intentionally do it. If you are making a product or if you are making a film, you have to intentionally make the flow happen, otherwise there is no point.
Yeah, but a lot of times we enjoy watching films even though we know the story. So clearly there is no information flow here. What's going on? Why do you think people still watch it?
We have probably read a book of Harry Potter and we know what happens. What you are experiencing while watching a film is, when the filmmaker has read the book, what did the filmmaker think about the book, and you are basically drawn into the perception of the filmmaker on experiencing the same story.
But simply having an experience is not enough. We need to be able to summarize it, build it into a mental model for that experience to be useful in the future. And depending upon our formal training or environment, those models can be different. In fact, those mental models shape our thinking process.
So how did you come about your thinking process? Is there a particular incident?
Very much. So, and it has kind of helped me shape my thinking in both technical job and creative adventures. And it came from a very, very hard experience that I learned while making my first film. Filmmaking is one of the trades where technology and creativity merge in a very significant fashion, because it is not only performance. It is about how do you capture the performance, how do you capture it in an audio format, how do you capture it in a video format, and how do you edit it, and how you make a product out of it that makes sense. So there are tremendous amount of variables that go into making a film, and that's why. And since I am an engineer, and I did not before I made my first film, I never had experienced filmmaking. I was naturally drawn to the technical aspects of filmmaking. So I was very much drawn into the technology of capturing image and capturing sound and digitizing it and editing it. And then when I made the film, I realized that whatever I did was basically making me make a technically perfect film, but not an emotionally significant film. Like, I spent months and months in understanding how a camera works, how I should learn the editing software, how should I make the special effects that I want in the film. But when I showed it to the audience at the end, only people said, we did not get the story. Like, what are you trying to tell us? And that was a big blow to me, which propelled me into learning how to write a screenplay rather than learning how to hold a camera. And I'm really fortunate that I got that failure experience very, very early on in my career, so that now I know that whatever technology that you use to make a film has to complement the story that you are trying to tell. The story has to come first. The technology comes later.
Exactly. Technology always comes later. That's the key here. And I say that too because I work with a lot of startups and small businesses. I help them bring their ideas to life. And 9 out of 10 times, people are too focused on technology and tools. Their product technically looks perfect, but there is no practical application. They have a solution which is looking for a problem to solve.
Tell me one thing. Do you always feel comfortable thinking this way? Like, I mean, did you ever face a mental block just because the way you think?
As an engineer, that's a drawback of mine, and I will tell you what the drawback is. I consider myself as a problem solver. So I try to jump to a solution before my customer understands that they have a problem. So I think one of the things that I'm learning every single day is, and that is also true for filmmaking, by the way. Like filmmaking, I try to jump to destinations within the film rather than spending much more time on the journey that I should take my audience on. Um, so uh, and that comes from my engineering background. So basically, educating your customers or educating your audience that they have an information gap or they have a problem is probably the first step of solving the problem. And many people don't know that they have a problem, and this I have observed in my engineering job and also have observed in my filmmaking world. There are tremendous amount of habituations that are going on that people go through without realizing that they are not necessary. And when I see them, I get frustrated. I'm like, okay, why are you not doing it in this way? Because my mental model is, okay, I want to jump to a solution, but I have to backtrack and solve the problem or tell the story with respecting the ignorance of my audience or the customer, which is something that I still learn, and I will probably learn till the end of time.
Did you find the solution to that?
So yes, so and that kind of goes to how I write stories. So yes, I have found, well, I won't say I have found a solution, but I have found a path that I can take to probably ease the journey. I have seen many failed attempts of films or series, or and you also think like, okay, what did you not like? And if you think back on why you didn't like it, the reason why you didn't like is because there is no cause and effect relationship in the story. If you just throw a bunch of ideas in front of someone without connecting them, then the person in front of you is bound to not understand what you're trying to say. Intentionally adding cause and effect relationship in your communication elements that you are using to communicate something, it could be film, it could be a business plan, it could be anything else, that is an extreme importance, and that is, I think, one of the paths that we can take to ease this problem of difficult communication. I know I jumped to a solution. So let's say I have jumped to a solution, and then I backtrack from that solution and ask, okay, why did this happen? Then this is the reason. Then why did this happen? Then this is the reason. And then I can go back to their problem. So basically, going from their problem to my solution, I have to leave like breadcrumbs for them to follow, right? And that is something that is missing even in films. Like films get boring because you don't understand the connection between scenes. So you have to create that path. You have to create the journey for your audience to understand the story that you're trying to tell.
It usually happens because most of the times people are taught to have an analyst mindset. Analyze things, find information, find facts. But the thing is, if these facts, this information does not hold together on some sort of base plate, lattice work, or mental model, then things can get quite tricky. The same goes for being creative or innovative. Many people will tell you how easy it is or how difficult it is. So how do we really go about it?
I think it goes back to what you want to do. So what I do is intentionally, I keep my eyes open, I observe things around me. And the second thing I do is once I absorb them, I try to create my own shell around them to figure out what I think about it. And that generates the seed for creativity and generates the seed for innovation. Anyone who wants to be creative and who wants to be innovative, I think they have to think about these two things, very simple things. Like first, observe and absorb, and then create your own opinion, perception, or something. If you just absorb and then just like go with whatever you have absorbed, then you will not be innovative or you will not be creative.
I think this is an important aspect. Observing and absorbing. Absorbing because this is the element of reflection, not just reaction or basic response, but more than that. It is highly important to be able to build own mental model and our own thinking process. And we also need to develop creative muscle and intuition for that.
I am realizing now, as every day goes by, is consistency in whatever you are creating or whatever you are thinking is probably much more important than what you are thinking about. After a while, whatever you are thinking about should be a second nature to you.
Practice makes us better, if not perfect. But to practice, we have to have more opportunities. And most importantly, we have to be more intentional about it, more deliberate about it.
And that is something that will only come if you intentionally make yourself immersed or intentionally create learning opportunities for you to learn about that skill, that activity, anything else. So that I think that consistently creating learning opportunities will immensely help in flexing that muscle.
And consistency means there is certain rhythm to it. We can't be like, I will do it whenever I get time to do it, or I will do it if I think about it.
You have to like write down the schedule of like, okay, I'm going to think about this at this time every single day or every single month or anything. I mean, consistency doesn't have to mean every single day. How do you measure you're not consistent? If you miss twice in a row, then you're not consistent. Then it's not important to you. Okay? So don't miss twice, like consecutively twice.
When we work with several mental models to think, it helps in developing intuition. It also helps in building skills, transferring analogies and principles from one field to another. That can be quite useful. Art is subjective application of science. And in a way, I reckon it helps us to think better. How to Think is a series where I help you doing just that. And I'll bring you another episode very soon. Until then, keep thinking.